Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good
Marianne,
morning.
Justin, Megan, thanks for joining us. Really excited to put on our mid-year kind of start
Wow.
of
Yeah.
our
It's crazy.
live stream series. And this next cycle, we're talking about a lot of infrastructure and a lot of pieces around that. And before we get started, I'm George Datterman. Our company, we're Valiant Technology, we're an IT service provider located in New York, but we work all over the country. And today we're really going to talk about infrastructure, and really what that do before we get into like the nuts and bolts of infrastructure. Really want to talk about our kind of philosophy, our design philosophy, and we kind of summed it up in a pyramid. And we'll give you a little backstory on it, so that you see that pyramid thing on a lot of our there's a lot of our material. I think it's really a kind of good and interesting way of describing like kind of how we approach solving problems. But before we get into that, I just want to say thanks to everyone who watches, subscribes. We have a great YouTube channel, kind of an active community, and we want to continue that. So if you have any questions, please fire them off to us. We always love to answer questions. So before we dive into our Valiant Pyramid infrastructure episode, I'm going to head over to Marianne for Tech Bites.
Awesome. Okay, so today's Tech Bite, what I really want to talk about is keeping cool this summer. We just had a huge heat wave, and obviously we're all sweating, but what I'm talking about is not about your personal keeping cool, but keeping your devices cool, specifically your laptops. We're not going to go deep into desktops, partially because a lot of the keeping cool stuff happens inside, and you need to do some PC building, but some simple techniques you can do to make sure your laptop doesn't overheat. So to start, one of the biggest things is to make sure your exhaust vents are unobstructed. Now on laptops, sometimes they can be really small. On the one I have, it's, more meant for portability, but its exhaust vents are just tiny little lines underneath. The important thing though is just to make sure that they have room to breathe. Always never rest it on a soft surface. So, I know we like to relax, but don't put your laptop on a pillow and use it. Don't put it on a blanket. I sometimes even laps. I know that's their name, but laps pretty soft surface and could block those airways.
Yep.
So one of the things you can do is you can get a laptop stand. And for cooling purposes, the best ones are ones with breathing room. Some laptop stands are just a solid, brick essentially, but maybe at an angle. But it's really good to have one that has aeration or a lot of, empty space in it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we have a couple that we use because you can buy them very cheaply, wherever you buy anything, Amazon or what have you. But you actually can make some in a pinch, do a DIY. I looked this up for this stream, and there's actually a lot of really creative examples where people are using like wine corks and the Connect sets. And there are some really good templates for cardboard. That should just build two cardboard pieces slot into each other, and then you've got a really nice laptop stand. So it's not something that you even need to spend that much money on. You could just check out your recycling. Part of the also preventing the exhaust vents from getting obstructed is to check and see if they have dust or dirt that's piling up. You see this more on your desktop or on even just look at your cable box or your video game systems. You'll see a lot of dust that starts piling up, and it's a good idea to get that cleaned. There's a lot of good ways to do this. There's a couple of bad ways to do this. A lot of the things I read said to use compressed air, and actually we don't recommend that. Basically, all it does is displace the dust, kind of pushes it further into your computer. The alternative would be to get a microfiber cloth. They can be bought in bulk or pick it up at the dollar store. Or even just sometimes I'll use a dry paper towel or a cotton swab. The only problem there is just make sure that it doesn't break off. Ultimately, if you're willing to spend the money, getting a little mini service vacuum is what we, the professionals, use. But it's actually really affordable and easily available online at whatever retailer you use. And that can be used in multiple ways, not just your laptop. You could use it, again, on your cable box or a lot of other devices that might need it. So it's actually a really good product.
A good technique is you have the vacuum and you take a little paintbrush and you kind of brush out the dust or brush the surfaces just to kind of loosen it up. Sometimes it's a little bit sticky on there, and it makes a huge difference on how loud it runs or how cool the temperature keeps.
Yeah, for sure.
And it extends the life of the equipment.
Oh yes, definitely.
Definitely important though to make sure that if you're doing the vacuum, not to use your regular home vacuum. There is a chance, depending on the kind that you have or how it's set up, that it builds up a static charge and can
Correct.
shock it when you put on it. There are ones that are specifically for like tech vacs that are and not expensive. They're small little handheld things, and they're have like a less chance of that static.
That's right.
Yeah, use the tool that's intended for the use.
Exactly.
Besides just checking out those exhaust vents, you can also, you can buy a laptop pad that is meant for cooling. So a lot of them have little fans underneath that can help keep it cool built in. We've even done, I don't know if anyone else has done this, but in a pinch, you can just point a fan at your laptop. It's if you think it's getting a little too hot and you're like, ooh, I should probably buy one of those stands. But in the meantime, point a fan at it, anything to keep it a little bit cooler to get that airflow going is something that can work. And then lastly, you can make sure your laptop can take rests, can take breaks. When it's working and it's working harder, it tends to heat up. So especially on hot days, it's a good idea to close out of unused tabs or programs just to make it so it doesn't have to run quite as heavy, and it helps it to maintain its temperature. And then also when you take a break, let your laptop take a break. Set it so you can set it to sleep while you're not using it. Laptops, you can easily do things like set it to shut down when you close, which is also really satisfying when you're leaving and you want to be like, I'm done with work for the next 20 minutes. Click. Like, it's just a very satisfying feeling. So yeah, giving it a rest lets it cool down, just like yourself. Give yourself a rest sometimes too.
Exactly. That's great. Well, thanks, Marianne. That's super useful. And sometimes you're sitting, you don't think about it getting hotter and hotter, especially on your lap. I don't know if you ever had that where you're like, man, why am I so hot?
Yeah. Well, that's a good indication. And then also if it's screaming and if your fans are screaming in a way that they never did before, one of the reasons could be that it's just way too hot.
Way too hot. So awesome. So let's jump into our kind of our philosophy a little bit. It's called, we call it the Valiant Way. It's kind of started out, this kind of in a nutshell, it's years of kind of work, and kind of the genesis of it is years ago. Justin and I were sitting in our kind of like conference room with a whiteboard, just kind of noodling around, trying to think about how do you kind of codify all the things we do in something that's kind of simple and meaningful to someone who doesn't exist in our world, technology and systems and infrastructure, and there's so many like little nuances and multi-letter acronyms that mean nothing to anybody but us. It gets complicated. So really, what we wanted to do is kind of like drill it down to some of its core pieces, and just as a kind of a guide, we decided to build it on the Maslow's hierarchy of need. So if you don't know what Maslow's hierarchy of need is, famous sociologist, idea that people need food, water. I think oxygen is kind of like a standard. You kind of need that one. But as you move up the pyramid, more and more innovation happens, and you start having stability, security, and scalability, which definitely kind of and all of those kind of correlate directly to our philosophy. So our philosophy is basically three core pillars, and the fourth one we'll get to in a little bit because it involves a lot more of our customer interaction. So I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But as I said, our three pillars of our philosophy are stability. That's the base of our pyramid. Security. If you can't do it securely, you kind of just took away the whole stability part. And exactly, exactly. If we can see the stability on the graphic, that was a great way of putting it. So it's the bottom of the pyramid. It's the core. It's the base. And as you move up, it goes into the security. Security, as I said, is the key piece of keeping it safe, secure, and functioning, and kind of meeting the CII triad, as we talked quite a bit about. Justin, what's the CII triad?
Is confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
Correct.
Those three pieces all live in that security layer, among other things as well too. But
correct.
That's where that stuff all lives.
And our last one is scalability. scalability is the ability to move the business or the business needs based on what's happening as business conditions. So really want to go. So I think what we're going to do is just start breaking down each one and how it applies to what we're what parts of the infrastructure that we work on for our customers. So let's just go through stability first. Just kind of throw it up there. It's simple. It really needs to work. Yeah. I've been working with our team here for years, and it was amazing when we first started working with customers that just had, let's say, poor stability or it's not a great system in place. After about 6 months, they're like, "Man, everything just kind of works."
Yeah.
And it's
the change from the server's down again mentality to the hey, everything it's reliable. It just sort of like you said, just sort of works. It just is there.
Exactly. It's and the real thought is that stability enables folks to continue delivering their job function, what they need to get done, and everyone knows that. If you're not able to do the work, you're missing out not only on the direct cost, but on the opportunity of what you're not doing. You start calculating that cost. It's actually kind of simple, really. It's like this. If you just take almost a basic calculation of your payroll divided by the number of folks you have and put it into an hourly. So every hour of downtime, it could cost you. That's hard costs that you're just paying for. But beyond that. Think about your reputation to your customers. You can't process that order. You can't service that customer. You're not able to get back to that person in a timely manner. These are all things that harm your reputation. They harm, and reputation damage is subtle, but it's damaging over time. It's kind of like it's like free radicals in your relationship. It just kind of attacks you from the inside, and it just kind of and so the other thing to think of is that we've shifted from in-house on-premise servers to cloud servers, but and tend to be the cloud is more stable and SaaS applications are more stable, but they can fail and they have failed. I mean, in the past year, we've seen multiple SaaS and cloud failures or just outages, right?
And even just in from design, when people think that, okay, I'm going to move my server from on-premise into AWS or Azure or whatever and just put one server there, it's still at the end of the day, those systems are built on the hardware systems built in data centers that can have issues. So even in designing a cloud infrastructure, you need to design that stability in mind that, hey, if something happens to the data center, if data center catches fire and burns down, like that, I mean, is something that happened this past year.
Right.
Yeah. What's the, what do we do? And that's, oh, well, we've built our infrastructure like Matt was talking about last week, the East Coast, West Coast. Well, it's a lot easier to do that in cloud because it's just clicking a couple of boxes to do that. But you still have to put that thought into it and that design into it, even though it is cloud.
Exactly. And this, the best way to kind of like even just put the title together into the stability is that stability increases our efficiencies. It just requires so many less problems. I mean, how many trouble tickets or issues get generated when you think about like a network outage, network level outage, a server level outage? I mean, it affects everybody.
Yeah, and that's even with the moving things into cloud and into SaaS, that last mile of making sure that your devices are online and connected to the network and connected to the internet become more critical. It becomes something that needs to be secure. If your internet connection was down and everybody's in the office and your files are in the office, it's like, okay, we can work around it a bit, but you want to make sure that you have that stable network. Feel like that structure, those bones of that to keep everything up and running.
Yeah,
it's really critical. It's super critical. So exactly. So I think our next pieces, I would have to go into security, which is a thing that was, I'd say, a couple of years ago, maybe less top of mind. But as we all know, in this day and age, it's literally so core to everything you do, and for us, we bake it into everything we do. Our thought is that if we can't protect it, you don't have it. It's not available. Let's go back to the CII triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And if you're not looking at it from that perspective, you really lose so much. Think about it this way. I think that many business owners, business leaders may not think their data has value. And I think that in our modern society, data is the currency. It's what we trade in. It's what we work in. It has, if you look at the market capitalization of companies that were, General Electric versus Google. I mean, General Electric makes atomic energy systems through firearms, and they make everything. And Google is a more valuable company because of its reach and depth of data and analytics, that sort of thing. So, but every company has data that's valuable.
Yeah,
it's valuable to you yourself. It's valuable to your internal and staff, and it's valuable to your customers and partners. So
some of it is, sometimes it's data, like information about what you're doing or your your intellectual property, and other times it's simply just having the information that you have about your employees. That there's you have employees, you have payroll info, you have contact info, you have social security numbers, and that data, while not necessarily valuable to you on a day-to-day basis in what you're doing, is certainly valuable to somebody that's looking to leverage that for identity theft
or damage your company's reputation, or hijack that for some kind of ransom.
Absolutely.
So
and that's just the data piece of it. But I think just the systems that you have in place have value to them as well too. The actual workstations, the computers you have.
Correct.
If those can become compromised, that's really when we talk about bring it back like that ransomware and data exfiltration and those threats. Those are usually executed by something like a botnet, where it's not somebody sitting at a computer using their computer to do those things. They're using other machines that they've leveraged, and those are just computers, people's machines out in the world connected to the internet that are being used to do those things, being used to mine Bitcoin or run through. I mean, that's
it's a digital equivalent, as Justin says, walking through the parking lot, pulling door handles, or smashing store windows and grabbing things out of the window, or grabbing things. So it's smash and grab kind of thing. And it's random. It can happen. It's going to happen to all of us at some point or another, some way, somehow.
Yeah.
And it's just dangerous. And so really it becomes that we have to much like our network stability or our stability portion. Really, we want to make sure, we're protecting against the most common sets of risks, and then actually even more holistically looking at some of the industries that we work directly with, some of our marketing communications folks, nonprofits, and some of the unique challenges they have. Nonprofits have donor information, which is so valuable. They have, they may be trading in some kind of very sensitive information. Some of the nonprofits we work with have access to people's medical records. We don't, so it becomes really complicated. And our creative companies, well, who's going to see your new greatest product besides your marketing company? And who's going to know what your marketing plans are, your strategy for your business? So that's why they've become such, for us, we see quite a bit, our marketing communications companies, they've become forced by their clients to really uplift their security. So we work all the time with that. And we want to recognize that they're unique. They're not banks. They're not services companies. They have a totally different way of working. So that's really important.
But again, we said your data is valuable to your business. Having name drops, email address is a big deal that if you don't want to lose that client or anything like that. So it is huge.
I think we make obviously we make a big deal of security because it is, and I think one of the questions that we do get when we talk to people about our pyramid is why security isn't at the base, why stability is, and part of that is because if the system and the environment that you're on isn't stable, it's impossible to secure it. It's impossible to make it secure when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, because you can't then validate the that it's working. You can't put those pieces in place because the security system crashes or the server crashes, and like, okay, well, these things don't work. It's kind of like having the gate to the front of your house without the fence around it. You know, like what?
Right.
Yeah, like that. What? You know, great. We put that in, but it's not. You know, that's the last part you need. So
Right.
that's.
I feel like that's a
Right.
metaphor for when I moved to New York. Like,
Yeah.
how secure I was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And also people find workarounds if things aren't working, and those
Mhm.
workarounds might not be as secure. So
Absolutely.
Actually, I think the workarounds are some of the greatest threats to small and medium businesses,
Mhm.
actually any business for that matter. But for the people we work with, because people just do stuff and without really because they have to get their work done.
Yeah.
I mean, and you empathize with them because they really need to get it done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you know they're exposing themselves in the business in a way. So it's really like it's not a destination; it's the journey, security, and so it's an ongoing thing, and you kind of run up and down the pyramid in my mind. So and the last one we want to talk about is scalability, and scalability is I think everyone talks about hyperscale and this that and the other, and it gets very confused.
Mhm.
But I think the idea is that all modern businesses are very dynamic. We have to be able to change based on market demand, market industry
Last year
trends.
taught us anything. It's that. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, who thought that we would have to put 2,000 people working remotely for more than a year in a hybrid manner, but with the bulk of them being working from their residence or from who knows where. And that's a scale problem. It's one that you have to be like, is our business able to, and once again, going up and down the pyramid, are we able to both allow people to scale, move to different locations, do different things while doing it securely and stably, with stability. And I think that it's just so incredibly important.
Yeah, this touches on that same shadow IT question too, is that if you build a, stable and secure environment, but now it can't support the amount of work that you need to bring into it, people are going to find other ways to get their work done, and they're going to move outside of that stable environment, outside of that secure environment, and do their own things. Even when we're designing for cloud, it makes it a lot easier to design with scalability in mind, because when you think about like a hardware server, the amount of drives that are in it, let's say for storage, is the amount of drives that are in it. If you need, I need to get an extra terabyte of space, well, you can't. You either have to buy a whole new thing or whatever, or move. Whereas in cloud, it's easy enough to just say, okay, yeah, we're going to scale it up, and when you're done, we'll scale it down and do those sorts of things. But you still have to design those systems to be able to do that. And really, when we think about scaling as well too, I think it's important to think about the scaling up is always the one people think of, but scaling down is just as important. That if you are building a system that's based on, let's say the total number of users that are working in it, when you are, I'm going to use a hypothetical, pitching for a new project, and that you're going to have to hire 5 new people to do this project for 18 months, and they're going to, coming on as temps for 18 months to work on this project, and then when they're done, they move on to something else. If you need to build infrastructure to support that and do that regularly, and it's not something that's scalable, you need to build that infrastructure with the idea of it needs to be able to do more than what we're potentially going to ask it to do, because maybe we're going to grow. Whereas if you know that, okay, if I need to hire 10 people for 18 months, I can do that. My costs are set for that because I'm going to turn up these cloud services, add these licenses, put these things in place, and run it for the time that they're here. You can build that into your proposal for that project and say, well, these are our known costs for the project. We're going to need these tools and materials and personnel. And when the project's done, we'll take these things back and move these things out and have that ability to adjust based on what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. It's really and it's really important to think about it both vertically, like going up, and laterally across.
Yeah.
Because you may have to scale things in different ways, in different fashions, and cloud allows that. But also, I think a lot of it too is this understanding your business technology a bit, and working to say, and not to make decisions based on, this is a cool product and this is how we should do it, but it's really understanding the business need so that it has that built into it. So it's really cool stuff. And I avoided it again to the end, I wanted to go through the three core pieces, but the last
Yeah.
piece, the top of our pyramid, is innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important. Innovation is where like the magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to allow our customers, staff, and leadership to have the platform to just make it work. So that when they say we have this great idea for a new line of business, we want to enter a new market, we want to when clients come to us and say, hey, we want to have a remote sales force, we're like, we're already 4 steps ahead of you. This is how we're going to do it. That's our goal. As an infrastructure company, we can help you be innovative. There's a lot of places we can help you, but innovation comes from the freedom to think and not worry about the things working. If you're worried about the fact that the server is going to go down every 4 days and that the network's not working, and like I'm going to show up for it's really big important call, but the internet is going to fail again for the 19th time this week. That really impacts your thinking. It changes the way. So.
Well, George, you were even saying it's the Maslow hierarchy. I mean,
Correct.
Innovation is like parallel to self-actualization, right?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
if you're putting it in context, it's like you can't, until all those other things are taken care of, you can't really you can survive, but you can't thrive. And this is
Correct.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That's perfect. You hit the nail on the head, Megan. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's exactly right. If you look at ancient history, everyone was the same when everyone's a hunter-gatherer, but as society built itself, it becomes people have specializations, and specializations only come when other things, when there's a freedom to be specialized.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that our always goal is to have people have that freedom to do the thing that they do really well. And I think that's the whole, I think that's what I think many MSPs want to do, but I don't think many. There's a disconnect, I think, between sometimes the customers, the technology, and MSP. Because I know sometimes we don't always have the 100% connection, but we really want people to understand that, and that's why we lead with this as part of everything we do, to say, let's get you to that innovation point. Let's get you to that place.
I like the metaphor of the highway, where, if you've got a highway that's full of potholes and speed bumps and no signs, and your car is broken down and doesn't have seat belts, going from your house to somewhere else is going to be a much bigger thing than if the highway is all paved and you have signs and GPS and your seatbelts and airbags and you recently got an oil change. It's like, okay, I don't have to think about how I'm going to get there. I need to think about where I'm going and what I want to do. And
Correct.
that is the way I see it, as once that infrastructure is in place, that foundation is in place, you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on what makes your business as opposed to what makes it, work. Just like you don't think about the plumbing in your house every time you wake up and take a shower. You just assume that it's going to work, and that's the goal. Is we want everything to you assume it's going to work because it reliably does, and it
It takes time. It takes time. It takes work. It does need care and feeding. But I think there's some of the businesses we work with, they're at that point. Things work very well, and we see it when we take on customers or we work with other partners. We don't necessarily they're not there yet, and and one of the processes we use to kind of bring that together, they give them that kind of sense, like, okay, you're ready. This is where, as we're moving forward, this is our quarterly business review process where we meet with them, understand, and give them something predictable so they can understand what's going on there. So we're excited, super excited. And then the other places that if the stability is not in place, it's really hard to automate things. Which people talk about automation, it's the future, AI, machine learning, but there's a lot of things that we need to have in place before you do that, or it's just a bunch of scripts or false data. So I think there's a lot of pieces to it. So I think with that, I'm going to close this one out. But I can keep talking for hours on end. We're almost at the half an hour mark. So much information here. It's great. I love it. Thank you so much for everyone. It's such a great conversation. And next week we're going to go really nuts and bolts, deep level. backup, network, and storage. Kind of like the foundational, like this is the stuff that needs to be in place for you to operate your business.
The base of the pyramid.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's a strength of it, right? Without that bottom part of it, it doesn't. It really can't do very much anything else. So, with that, with that, thanks everyone. Please check us out on YouTube. Please check us out on LinkedIn, and we're on all the different social media sites. And check out our site at thevaliantway.com. And I can't wait to do this with you all next week. All right. Thanks a lot. Everyone have a great 4th of July. Thank you. Bye now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.